warm welcome to an interview with a very special guest. He is the Indian Air Force's top operational commander, the Air Officer Commanding-in-Chief of the Western Air Command, Air Marshal Raghunath Nambiar. Welcome to the show, sir.
Thank you.
The nation is celebrating 20th anniversary of India's famous victory in the Kargil War, and I suppose it's a good inflection point. Now, what makes Air Marshal Nambiar eminently suitable as a talking point and on recollecting what went into India's big victory there was that he was one of the Mirage pilots who broke the Pakistani back on the craggy heights on the ridges of Kargil. Sir, I understand that that spectacular video of Pakistanis scampering from their picket at Tiger Hill in the June of 1999, that video was taken from your aircraft when you were bombing Tiger Hill.
Yeah, that's right. That was on the 24th of June. I was flying a Mirage 2000. My backseater was Colonel Manish Yadav, and we were tasked with dropping a laser-guided bomb on Tiger Hill. While it was just two of us in the aircraft, there were over 100 of us on the ground. It was a total teamwork. A lot of people strived hard and long, put in a lot of effort to make sure that we were up in the air and dropping a bomb on this place.
So give us a sense of how you pulled it off, because precision bombing at that point in time was very new to the Indian Air Force. The Indian Air Force was just in the process of integrating the first lot of listening pods, the targeting pods.
Oh, I think there was a big element of luck in this. At that point in time, we had just procured the listening pod. It had not yet been integrated on the Mirage, and it was at the moment in test. We had 5 pods with us at this time. All of them were developmental pods with various versions of software, with a lot of glitches and bugs. And therefore, one of the biggest challenge for us was to make sure that they functioned in a proper manner. And if there were any particular issue with it, we could cater for it by our planning and by our process. And that's where the challenge lay. We had to sort of first work on the pod, work on a new weapon which we had not dropped from the Mirage before, never been trained on. And most importantly, the fact is that this is the first time the Indian Air Force was employing a laser guided bomb in anger. And the challenge was to make sure that it went well. There was a huge amount of anxiety, big worry that probably things would.
Did you have the time to simulate it, sir? Did you have a time to simulate it?
Oh no, we had to take on this operation with on our feet. The war had started. This was on the 24th of June. Tiger Hill, which had a very important place in Kargil, along that valley, which overlooked NH1A, which is the national highway. We had intruders sitting on top, very accurately telling back the artillery on the Pakistani side of where their weapons were, what was the effectiveness of their weapon, and it was causing havoc on our national highway 1A. It was very important for us to put a stop to that, and that's why finally on the 24th of June, the Indian Air Force was tasked to get in and attack Tiger Hill.
So when you were flying those sorties, those precision bombing sorties,
yes,
what's your memory? Because you'd be flying supersonic and these were tiny targets.
Tiger Hill had 9 Arctic tents which were pitched on a small plateau at its very tip, just about 150 feet from the top. We were coming all the way back from Adhampur, that is just next to Jalandhar. The Mirages were based there, and we had almost about 35 minutes of navigation to make it to Tiger Hill. While Tiger Hill looks very spectacular from the ground, from the air, the big hills which stand out in that area is Nunkung and also K2, Godwin Austen. They were clearly visible, and Tiger Hill is some sort of a puny dwarf in front of all of them. Finding a Tiger Hill was not so simple as it looked, because it was one peak among many in the near neighborhood. And I must tell you that being in a Mirage 2000 with a very accurate navigation system, this made it relatively easy. Now, laser guided weapon delivery requires the aircraft to be accelerated to about 1000 kilometers per hour speed. And at those speeds, things happen very fast. We had a lot of actions to take to complete before the weapon is actually dropped. And all this requires a lot of team effort and teamwork. Both Manish and I, we had known each other for some time. Manish was a very bright youngster, very capable, and he was a big asset to have in the cockpit behind me. And I think the close coordination between the two of us is the reason why we hit the target so accurate.
So this basically took away the sighting prowess for the Pakistanis, for sighting and targeting the Indian
The observing capability which is essential for artillery firing. To get accurate artillery firing was removed.
So how low were you flying? There was obviously this danger of the shoulder fired stingers, which had already brought down two Indian aircraft. So what were what were you doing to make sure that the fighters did not get hit? There were no more casualties.
Tiger Hill is at a height of about 16,800 feet. The number of Tiger Hill, like many other places have trigonometric heights, was 5062 meters. We were flying about 10,000 feet above that to keep ourselves safe from the dangers. We were safe. Yes, we were safe.
This was obviously something which which took you by surprise. It happened very suddenly. There was no time to prepare, and there were lots of hiccups. It started off on a bad note. A helicopter went down, and then a MiG-21 went down. There was another MiG-27 which went down due to engine failure. So what were the thoughts? There was also a hesitant start. So how did you get into gear, and what convinced the leadership that these kind of precision strikes would work, and there was no precedent in the history of air warfare of something like this?
I think the attack of Muntodalo on the 16th of June had convinced the leadership that the Mirage was very potent, and therefore when the lightning and the pave combination was available to us finally and had proven itself capable of being delivered, it was but natural that they would task us for such an important target. And I think I must credit the leadership with taking the right decision, making the correct choices, and making sure that we were equipped with all this weaponry. You may remember that lightning was procured in 1997. It was contracted for in 1997, and delivery had just started. So there was a lot of forethought involved in our leadership, who had decided 4 or 5 years ago that we required a capability like the lightning. So it is not something which happened just because we wanted it so in 1999. There was a lot of thought, and there was a lot of planning involved in getting us the weapon in 1999.
So we'll go back to the spectacular video which was taken by the equipment on your aircraft. It saw the Pakistanis scampering, running for their life. When the precision bombs were raining on them.
Yeah.
Could you see something like that from your eyes?
No, not at all. All we had was a 4-inch display, a 4x4-inch display, which is just about the size of two phones. That's about the screen dimensions, and that too with very poor resolution. I think today we are talking of 4K displays and retinal displays and things like that. That was a very, very poor display. The quality was not at all good. So what used to happen is, after we used to carry out this video at filming of these places, we used to take it back to our crew rooms, look at them very closely with large size televisions to make out what exactly is that what we saw, and confirming for ourselves whether what we saw is actually what we thought it was.
So which brings me to the point is that from an air power perspective, how far have we come in these 20 years?
Oh, we have traveled a long way. We have made a huge amount of progress in every which way. Some of the things which are really spectacular what have happened, I'm very proud about, is our communications. What we were in 1999 and what we are today is a world of difference. We have the AFNet deployed, we have the capability to now securely message each other with a huge modicum of safety and security, and that is just one facet. Our weapon systems have improved tremendously. The LGBs could go 7, 8, 10 kilometers from the aircraft. Today we have standoff weapons like the Spice 2000 and the Crystal Mace, which go a much longer range. The BrahMos, for example, can go up to 450 kilometers. I mean, that's the Indian Air Force capability today.
So the air-launched BrahMos is now an operational weapon?
It is undergoing a set of trials, but it is working, and it has shown itself to be very spectacular, very accurate, and we are in the process of operationalizing it. It's just a matter of maybe weeks or months before we have a capability.
Tell us also about what happened at Muntodalo and Point 4388, which were the other big events in Operation Safed Sagar, which was the Air Force operation.
Let me tell you the turning point was Muntudalo. While Tiger Hill got all the attention because of a very spectacular video, the facts where Muntudalo operations was the turning point. I don't think ever before in our history of our Air Force, or in fact of the armed forces, have we managed to achieve so much as we did in Muntudalo. In one single attack with 4 Mirage 2000 dropping 6 250 kg bombs each, we killed roughly about 300 Pakistani soldiers. I think it was a very spectacular and very successful attack, and it was the turning point. From Muntudalo is located in the eastern part of the Kargil sector, and to my mind, after the 16th of June, when we hit Muntudalo, from then onwards, the entire Pakistani infiltration attempts in the eastern sector had come to a standstill. Tiger Hill still stood, but that was on the western side, and a valley leading into Tiger Hill, which had a trigonometric height located on the valley floor, was 4388. So the logistics support for Tiger Hill used to flow through the valley of 4388 from Gultari and come up the slope to Tiger Hill. That was the way the battle was also progressed. So 4388 was next in line after Tiger Hill was hit. We had discovered 4388. There were a lot of intrusion. There had a lot of hangars which had been built into that valley, and we went after them with hammer and tongs. We dropped something like about 100,000 pounders into that valley.
Really?
Yes, 500 kg bombs. I mean, there's a huge quantity of weapons which you throw into that place.
So that's the kind of firepower which the Pakistanis were subjected to, which perhaps broke their will. So you were flying under tremendous constraints, not just the edge of your operational envelope, with the kind of precision equipment which you were possibly flying operationally for the first time, but there was also this big embargo not to cross the LOC.
I must tell you something. The Mirage was not the first aircraft which I flew the lightning pod in. I had flown the lightning pod in at that point in time on 2 other aircrafts earlier. I had flown the lightning on the F-16, and I had also flown it on the Phantom 2000. Both of them in Israel when I was evaluating the lightning pod.
Okay.
They were in 1996 and 1997. The pod was not yet fully ready, and we were evaluating it on behalf of the Indian Air Force. So when the lightning pod actually started being inducted in the Indian Air Force, at that point in time I was lucky enough to be at the right place at the right time. I was available for flying. I was at that time a wing commander. I was posted into Gwalior, and I was responsible for flight safety. And in a jiffy, when this war broke out, I was now capitulated without being asked when or where and how into battle. And therefore there was some sort of the first challenge was getting used to the fact that we were in hostile airspace. There was lives at risk. We were going harm's way, but it was thrilling all the same. It was like at that point in time, I can still feel the hairs on my back of my hand stand in sort of at attention.
Were you having Pakistanis? Could you see the Pakistanis flying operational patrols?
No, they were nowhere in the scene. They just sort of did not even dare come close. We had a major asymmetrical advantage over them. We had beyond visual range missiles, they had none. And therefore they didn't dare come close to us.
See, it was the Jaguars which had the lightning targeting pods in greater numbers at that point in time. But could you explain why the Mirage was selected for these missions?
While we had bought 10 lightning pods for the Jaguar, they had not yet been integrated. The Mirages were ahead in the integration chain, and that's why the Mirages got used. And the Mirage moreover had a great advantage when it was flying at height. The Jaguars had a problem of thrust. It was not possible for that aircraft to operate with the sort of relative freedom that the Mirage enjoyed at altitude.
Since there is no precedent of air warfare at these heights, what did it take to create the belief that you could pull it off?
Muntudalo actually proved that the Mirage could target accurately even with dumb bombs. And having been equipped with the lightning pod, we were the only aircraft really capable of doing precision guided work at high altitude. And therefore there was this sense that we could do anything. We were like tigers. So we were the only ones who could do it, and I think we felt rather proud about doing what we did.
So you were the tigers at Tiger Hill. So a lot of has been said, and it's in the public domain, about inter-service friction during the 1999 Kargil War. You know, so there are two parts to my question. One is how were those hiccups overcome? I mean, we know that the Air Force even had a separate name for its operation. So there was Operation Safed Sagar for the Air Force and Operation Vijay for the Army. And there was also an impression that the two sides were not really integrating their plans.
That's not true. Western Air Command fought this war on behalf of the Indian Air Force. Western Air Command, Op Safed Sagar, was a part of the Op Vijay. The Op Vijay was the overall national war effort, of which Op Safed Sagar was the airborne part. And therefore, the question of not being integrated does not arise. We had Western Air Force, Western Air Command has an air officer commanding Jammu and Kashmir, specifically deputed with the army to look after integration between the two of us. He was very much in theatre. He was operating out of Srinagar. He was fully coordinated for his operations with the Corps Commander of 15 Corps, and we had great visibility on what the army was doing. We had excellent visibility on what the army task was and how we could support it. I think we worked in close coordination with each other, and all these reports of us having some sort of tiff between the army and the Air Force are all unfounded and baseless.
So if there were a Kargil kind of a situation today, is it a given that the air power would be employed at a much earlier stage than what it was 20 years ago, and in fact there would be a preponderance of air power to rid India of the kind of situation that we had in 1999?
We had a preponderance of air power in Kargil in 1999, and we will have a preponderance of air power even today. That will always happen. We will put our best foot forward. We will have assets which would come from anywhere to anywhere in India. If it belongs to the Indian Air Force, it belongs to the war, and it will be fought with our assets. All our assets will be in place, and I do not believe that there would be any shortage of weapon system which were probably available somewhere, and we would not be utilizing it if we had to win, to achieve victory. I think that's a given.
So you're the top operational commander of the Indian Air Force. The Pakistan Air Force did not dare venture against the Indian Air Force in 1999, but from information available in the public domain, we know that it is a far better equipped Air Force today. So has the re-equipping of the Pakistan Air Force been catered for in Indian planning?
Oh yes, we have our plans in place. We are getting the Rafale shortly. It will be equipped with the Meteor, and we will have better weapons, definitely much better weapons than what our adversary would have. The induction of the Rafale would be a game changer in this area, and we are eyes down for the first delivery of the first aircraft, which will take place in September of this year, and the squadrons will be available with us from the May of 2020. So we have our plans in place, and we have taken care of these issues which you brought about. I think this is behind us now.
So how much of a difference to the operational capability of the Air Force will be brought about by two squadrons of the Rafale?
The Rafale would not be an end in itself. We would be looking at more aircrafts of various types. You may be aware that the Indian Air Force is looking at 114 new fighters, which is called the multi-role fighter aircraft, MRFA, and the government has ably supported this requirement of ours. We believe that in the near future we will have a procurement process in place which will get us these weapons, and this is, you may remember, this is being done under what we call as the strategic partnership model, in which we will have an Indian entity who will be given the technology and who will develop and make this aircraft for us. I think that's a win-win situation for the nation and for the industry.
Sir, I'll go back to the reverses, the initial reverses which the Air Force faced at Kargil.
Yeah.
The loss of aircraft shot down by shoulder-fired Stinger missiles, and how we'll be talking in terms of lessons learned in Afghanistan between 1979 and 1989 during the Soviet occupation of Afghanistan. It's available in open source material that the Soviets at that point in time lost as many as 350 aircraft to Stinger hits. So I'm just extrapolating it to Kargil 20 years ago and to the situation today. There were many more Stingers which were available at the Kargil heights in 1999 than what we had perhaps thought were there, and their position may be even better in terms of equipment today. So in terms of planning and counter actions, how well are we prepared?
You see, once we had factored in that the Stingers were there in the battlefield, we catered for it. We kept ourselves safe from them. Today, our challenges are different. They're probably more advanced, more capable, and have a bigger envelope. We cater for them as well. This is just a cat and mouse game where one technology on one side improves to a certain extent. We cater for it. We get in electronic warfare into the game plan. We get in so many other variables which exist, and we fight to win.
But sir, if it was that simple, it was just a question of tactics, why did the Russians suffer 350 casualties in Afghanistan?
I think probably they're a bit, dogmatic about the way they went about fighting that war, and what the compulsions were, I am not very sure about. But the fact is that when you face the challenge of a Stinger, which would probably kill you without even you being aware of it, there's a requirement to sort of take a step back, probably look at the problem from a different angle and find solutions. And therefore, I cannot really speak for what and why they did not do what they did. But I guess this is something which we took a lot of lessons from. We learned from the Afghan operations. We learn from every operation, even if it has not been fought by us. We look at each of these operational things in a lot of detail. We have our think tanks which look at these operations. We try and imbibe whatever possible lessons, whether it was the Kosovo operations, whether Iraq operations, whether it was our own operations in 71, in 65, in the operations in Kargil. All of them go into our and finally formulate our doctrines. And our doctrines say that we do not go harm's way unless there was a chance, a calculated chance which would get us victory.
So the lessons have been absorbed. Sir, we hear that when people talk about the probability of war breaking out in this part of the world, there's a higher probability of this happening in the mountains, where we also have our disputed areas. And I've heard you recall Winston Churchill when he said that air power is the supreme expression of warfare. So give me a sense, in any future scenario, how important would be a role which air power plays in saving the day for India and winning a war if need be.
Air power allows you to concentrate. It is possible for me as a nation to focus air power into one particular sector and take it and put it into some other sector the next day. It's very mobile, it's very flexible. The response time is very low. These are some of the traits of air power which the other services do not really enjoy. It would take the Navy probably 2 days to probably deploy from the east coast to the west coast, and maybe even longer to become really effective. It would take the army a month to probably move a division from one place to another, maybe from the eastern theatre to the western side. The Air Force doesn't work in those time frames. We work at a very fast tempo. Within 48 hours, my aircraft is ready for wherever we are. We can be deployed and ready for fighting a war at instant notice. And this makes us very flexible, makes us very quick in response. That is our inherent advantage in having air power with us.
So for short, intense wars of the future, it is air power which is going to make a critical difference. Thank you, Air Marshal Nambiar.
I would like to say that,
yes,
that air power will be the only way which we will fight. There will be multiple ways of fighting, but I do believe air power will play a very important role, and the role will be just as important as it is today.
That's very well put. Thank you very much, Air Marshal Nambiar. That brings us to an end of this interview. Thank you for watching, and do keep tracking SP's video presentations for news, updates, reviews and analysis on defense and aerospace. Thank you very much for watching. This is Vishal Thapar signing off for SPs.